And let's see what my opponent going to do. Finds a Halimar Depths. I personally think, one of the disadvantages of these 4-color control or even Esper is that you play a lot of tapped lands. That certainly doesn't work in Metalhawk. I really tried to reduce the number of tapped lands as minimal as possible because you really want to use that mana as quickly as you can. Of course, the advantage of Halimar Depths, being able to filter your draws, is certainly very powerful. Of course, it can also be very depressing when you discover that your next 3 cards are pretty much all irrelevant, and it really doesn't matter what order they're in, it's all going to be crappy. My opponent has, of course, Skyfisher to go ahead, of course, Sanctifier to blow up a Prism. That's unfortunate, but since I have another one in my hand, it really isn't a big loss, and I'd certainly rather him blow up a Prism up now than something that's more relevant later, so not really that big a deal. So he passes the turn back, and I find yet another land. So now the land is starting to come. So here again, different ways I could go. Now having the Galvanic Blast is nice because it allows me to swing in, and if he tries to double block, I can always take out one of those blockers and essentially get a 2-for-1. So here I think about attacking with a Metalhawk and ended up just sitting in the Skyfisher. Again, because in order to kill it, he has to triple block, and if he does that and doesn't have a counterspell, I'm really able to punish him for doing that. He recognizes that probably and just decides not to go ahead and block. So I've now got lots of mana to develop here, and I go ahead and just bring out Squadron Hawk, get the last one out of the graveyard, out of my library, and then go ahead and play out a Prophetic Prism. Again, continuing to draw. And if you notice that I am now way ahead on as far as total cards drawn in the game, simply because he hasn't found a 4C, and I've gotten 3 or 4 uses out of the Prophetic Prism. Makes a huge difference. So pass the turn back, and see what my opponent's able to do. Now again, he's got a pretty tough situation here. It would be really difficult for him to really swing in with much of anything. Without taking. He does go ahead and send in 2 of the Seagate Oracles plus, of course, Sanctifiers. Had some different things I could have done here, but again, just decided that I would go ahead and trade. No, I'm not going to trade. Okay, I probably would have traded in retrospect, but certainly just blocking one of them with the Metalhawk and doing nothing else is perfectly fine. Interesting decision there. So we loved hearing comments, if you would have done something differently in some of these combat spots. It's certainly an area that I think I need some improvement in, so I would appreciate hearing your feedback on that. Draw a Perilous Mirror here. Go ahead and play that land, and feeling much better as far as land. I really don't need much more than that. That's a great place to be. Lots of spells, just a few land. Once you're at this point, that really is perfect. So here I'm going to go ahead and swing in. Now, this time I do it differently. I think I'm not exactly sure why, other than the fact maybe I wanted the core Skyfisher back on defense so that I'm able to better block the Sanctifiers or maybe one of the Seagate Oracles. Not sure it makes a huge difference, and maybe encouraging my opponent thinking that he can double block. But once again, he's ahead enough on life total that he just doesn't feel like he needs to do that. And then I'll continue to develop my board, get my own Squadron Hawks out, plus a Perilous Mirror, and pass the turn back. Into turn, opponent goes ahead and kills core Skyfisher. I mean, you can't get much better use out of a Doomblade than killing off Skyfisher, so makes sense. And really then allows him to really swing in with all the Squadron Hawks now, knowing that at the very least he'll be able to trade with them. Now, if you recall, he's down 1, so here I can actually trade off and know that I'm going to have 1 extra. And see, that's where that advantage of trading in that Perilous Mirror early for a Squadron Hawk, I think this is where it really pays off. Because I'm able to block here, and that's all his Squadron Hawks. I know that they are all gone now, and I don't have to worry about them anymore. Opponent just plays a Terramorphic and passes the turn back, and I draw yet another Perilous Mirror. Swinging with the Metalhawk, he now has no Air Force, so not much you can do with that. And we're starting to draw a little closer. Now here I have some interesting decisions that I can make. Obviously with the Galvanic Blasts are much better if I can get 3 artifacts into play, so drawing that 3rd Perilous Mirror is really, it's actually my 4th Perilous Mirror. No, that's right, my 3rd Perilous Mirror is really great because I'll have 3 artifacts in play. So I get that, and can also go ahead and run out that last Squadron Hawk, and now I'm really going to be able to get in every turn for some fairly significant damage and really begin to close that gap. Unless he's able to find some flyers. Finds another Halimar Depths. Swings in with the Seagate Oracle. Now see here, I made a clear mistake. I'm sorry that happened much faster than I should have let it. But I blocked the Seagate Oracle with Perilous Mirror and went ahead and traded for it. Should not have done that. It was a clear mistake. If I was going to do it, I should have at least, before the Perilous Mirror died, gone ahead and used one of those Galvanic Blasts on my opponent. So that was definitely a mistake on my part. So here I'll run out Life Staff, and my opponent goes ahead and uses a Deprive on it. Now again, that was actually, you might think, wow, that seems like kind of a waste. But really, again, if he's keeping me off of having 3 artifacts so that my Galvanic Blasts aren't going to be good, I don't know if he knew that I had Galvanic Blasts because I hadn't played one yet, but certainly it seemed like it was a good call. So swinging here with the Squadron Hawk and the Glen Hawk, he again doesn't have any blockers for it. And now I'm really thinking, you know, it's just going to be helpful for me if I have some ground guys. Haven't seen him play any artifacts at this point, so I just go ahead and run out the Core Sanctifiers and leave a mana up for Galvanic Blast, Lightning Bolt, anything like that. So, and now, of course, I don't know if my opponent was just waiting for me to play one or what the deal was, but in a very quick amount of time goes ahead and runs out 2 different artifacts. So I thought that was interesting. Now here, I go ahead and get rid of this Core Sanctifiers before he's able to put a Life Staff on it. That Life Staff in this deck really allows Esper to gain a whole lot of life, and this deck really, like any aggro deck, does not want to see my opponent drawing a lot of life, gaining a lot of life. So it's so important there to make sure he's not going to be able to swing in and attack with that. And a 3/3 is pretty significant, especially if trading with it, he's also going to gain some life out of the deal. So even though my opponent's getting a little lower on life, and that Lightning Bolt could have come in handy somewhere else, that was definitely the right decision to make sure that doesn't happen. Obviously can't prevent it going up in the Seagate Oracle, and that's all he does, and passes the turn back. And so here I'm very fortunate in that I draw yet another Perilous Mirror, and will be able now to get my artifact count all the way back up and really make those Galvanic Blasts something pretty powerful. So again, swing in with my air guys. He doesn't have anything he can do, and at this point, unless he's got some pretty significant counter spells, he's in a world of hurt. Run out that Perilous Mirror, leave myself lots of mana open, and see at any point now, if he starts messing with those Perilous Mirrors, I'm able to just Galvanic Blast and pretty much take the win. I mean, it's going to take very little now for me to win. So my opponent, interesting enough, does nothing that entire turn, plays a land, has something in hand, could very easily be a counter spell. I go ahead and send my first Galvanic Blast, doesn't hit a counter, and at this point, I actually draw into a third one, and now it's like, okay, I've got all kinds of answers here. This is going to be no problem. Go ahead and swing in with everything. You know, it doesn't really matter what he does. And he blocks one of them. I show him a Galvanic Blast, and he goes ahead and concedes. And so I win game 1. So hope you enjoyed that, and I'll be back for game 2 shortly.